This is the first week that you're actually starting to do your translation exercises. And we want you to take a look at some guidelines and some steps to help you maximize your experience in doing Hebrew translations. We want you to limit your time each week to a total of 5 hours on the translations. No more. We're looking at the amount of time that would typically be set aside in a standard course. And we always want to guard our students' time and to help them apportion appropriate amounts to everything they have going in their lives. You shouldn't be spending more than 5 hours on a translation exercise. So if you do not finish the translation exercise, but you have taken the amount of time allotted, just draw a line on your translation exercise and make a notation that you have completed the time. In the early stages, you're going to find that you maybe don't get as far as you thought you would. That's okay. It doesn't matter how much you get at the early stage as much as you're constantly processing through the kinds of things that we're learning. As you go along, you'll get more efficient at things, and you'll find that you actually get further and further in the lessons. We also set a time limit because when you read with your TA, one of the things that we want to make sure happens is that we get to see how your brain works as it's trying to figure things out. We don't mind having you sight read and taking a look at things that you haven't prepared before, because we can see how you're trying to process the information and what kinds of things we can guide you in to help you make that learning experience more effective. As you do each translation, here are the steps that you're going to do. We want you to begin by going through the translation and writing out as much of the translation as you can get. There may be places where you don't remember a particular word, or you can't figure out what that particular translation should be. And if you have troubles, go ahead and feel free to leave it blank and continue on. Just try to get as much of the translation as you can possible. Then, after you've gone through part of the lesson, I wouldn't do this verse by verse necessarily, but after a certain segment, look at the answer key and check your translation against what is in the key. The verb forms will be parsed or grammatically analyzed so that you can figure out what you should have observed. You'll find that the translations are there to give you some kind of guide as to what you should have seen in the text. And we want you to correct your text based on the key, and we want you to write in, again, some kind of a verbal response about what you should have seen. I should have recognized the ending is feminine, or whatever it is that you may have missed. Write it out so that it gives you some kind of a reminder of what you missed the first time. You'll find that extremely helpful when you go back to do review for the exams. So check yourself against the key. You may find that there are still questions that you don't have answered. Highlight those in some way and ask those questions when you do your face-to-face time with the tutors. And you may, if those questions are not answered, or if you feel that they are more complex than you felt adequately satisfied in that time, they may be the kinds of questions that you want to ask on the online forum, where I address collectively all the different feedback that is coming from each of you, so that you can learn from one another's questions and can find answers to those things that are particularly troubling as you try to navigate the text. Hopefully in that way, you'll find that your skills at translating will constantly get more refined. That's the closest replication that we can give you of the classroom experience. In the classroom, you would find that you would get to observe each individual orally reading the text, translating the text, making mistakes, learning from those, and collectively you have an experience that far exceeds your own. In an online format, We have to replicate that with your face-to-face time with the tutors that gives you a chance for you to get feedback immediately. We also have the forum context where you can hear of the kinds of things that are going on with other people's translations so that we can refine and hone all of those things for you. If you forget words, in the back of the workbook there is a glossary that covers the vocabulary for the entire course. It is set up alphabetically, so you should be able to look up these words and find anything there that does not immediately come to mind. Don't be frustrated by that. Even as a student who has read Hebrew for almost 30 years, I run across terms that for some reason slip my mind at the moment, whether it is the fact that they very rarely occur and I really have never learned them that well, or whether it just is the fact that something doesn't sit right and I can't recollect what the exact meaning is. We have to look up words. It's a constant learning process. So don't be frustrated by that. Think of it as another step in constantly reiterating and reinforcing what you've learned. Lastly, as you go through the translations, let me try to bring you to a sense of balance on both sides of the coin. Some of you are type A people, and you are going to find every jot and tittle in that translation process, and you're going to need to find an answer to absolutely everything. That's good. It's good to have that inquiry, but you also will need to step back and to become less focused on these particulars and be able to think in terms of language, context. I would really encourage you to take time each lesson and practice reading a particular verse or couple verses, to read them over and over and over again until you get meaning without having to translate. You're going to be focused on the details that give you each component and double checking yourself. You need to get to a point where your gut starts to be able to interface with that attention to detail to make you a better reader. There are others of you who are going to find yourselves struggling with the details of grammar. You are going to have a tendency to excel with reading with your gut, to be able to pick up words and perhaps be able to put them together into sentences, but what you will lack will be the precision of being guided by the grammar. You will have a tendency to do what I call the shotgun method, or to use the collage approach, in which each word is either a shotgun blast intended to try and kill off as much meaning as possible, as randomly as possible, or to take and paste words into a sentence in a way that creates meaning, but it's not necessarily the author's. So you too need to read and try and perceive meaning as you read it, but as you do, you are going to have to force yourself to pay attention to the particulars. In order to translate, it is not about you, it is about you connecting with the author. So you have to find out how the author wanted to portray the story for you and make sure that you are replicating that. So regardless of your personality type, whether you're very attentive to details, perhaps OCD a little bit, or whether you're more dynamic and you kind of go with the flow and enjoy the reading, you both need to come to the center and you need to let both elements guide you as you work on your translations.